Extremists sharply escalated attacks on United States forces. Bombings and kidnappings became a daily industry. While American troops eventually captured dictator Saddam Hussein quietly, the violent end of his sons acted as a massive catalyst. The charred bodies of Uday and Qusay Hussein in Mosul did not bring peace. They plunged Iraq into absolute chaos. Why did the elimination of the regime's chief executioners fail to bring stability? The sudden absence of the state created an absolute void. Dozens of radical factions instantly filled that power vacuum, launching a relentless war for total control. The iron grip shattered. Sectarian slaughter quickly replaced state terror. Sunnis and Shiites began wiping each other out. Looters stripped the national armories bare. Unregistered weapons flooded the black market overnight. This immediate eruption of urban warfare would not fade away. The newly fractured reality would stretch forward for over a decade, systematically erasing hundreds of thousands of lives. Old political structures dissolved completely. More than 50 competing armed militias carved the ruined country into isolated combat zones. The ruined country drowned in the chaos of daily bombings. Its former absolute master buried himself in a dirt hole near Tikrit. He traded the polished marble of his 75 presidential palaces for a cramped spider hole. Bricks and garbage hid the entrance. The suffocating smell of damp earth mixed with the stench of unwashed clothes. Oxygen barely seeped through a hidden ventilation pipe. Dirt walls pressed against his shoulders. He had just enough room to lie down. Provisions dried up. Couriers stopped coming. The violent deaths of his sons severed his last threads of control. Loyalists fled. The regime evaporated. The all-powerful dictator devolved into a hunted phantom merely trying to survive the night. December 13, 2003. Operation Red Dawn. American forces sealed a rural compound. Soldiers cleared the debris. They pulled away a camouflaged styrofoam cover. Deep inside the narrow pit sat a disheveled, exhausted old man. He guarded a briefcase packed with $750,000. A loaded pistol rested nearby. But the cash bought absolutely nothing in the dark. The weapon stayed holstered. He surrendered without a single shot. 5 months before the dictator was dragged from the dirt in December 2003, American military pathologists stood over the bodies of his heirs. 4 corpses lay pulled from the rubble. Uday, Qusay, Mustafa, the bodyguard Abdul Samad. How do you prove to a terrified nation that its lifelong tormentors are truly dead? Autopsies, dental records, the unprecedented release of post-mortem photographs. The state identification machine engaged immediately. Military medics meticulously examined the remains. Sharp camera flashes strobed across the room. The bursts of white light captured disfigured, pale faces resting cold on the autopsy table. Specialists matched destroyed facial features directly with classified intelligence files. Forensic dentists verified the dental records. Then they checked the legs. Uday carried heavy surgical hardware and deep tissue scars from a 1996 assassination attempt. A titanium rod anchored his shattered bone. The physical match was absolute. The corpses now served a secondary purpose. The Geneva Conventions strictly limit the public display of killed combatants. Washington deliberately bypassed this international protocol. To permanently crush the spirit of the growing Iraqi insurgency, U.S. command weaponized the mutilated bodies. The terrorized population had to see their nightmares lifeless. Military officials gathered the graphic forensic evidence. They handed the uncensored photographs directly to the global media. Heavy tow missiles mangled the bodies of Uday and Qusay long before global media photographed their faces in the morgue. The 101st Airborne Division stopped negotiating. They unleashed overwhelming mechanical violence. A wire-guided tow missile launched with a deafening screech. It punched cleanly through the outer concrete wall. Seconds later, the structural integrity failed. The upper floor collapsed in a massive cloud of thick dust. Heavy ceilings crashed directly onto the defenders. The suffocating stench of burnt gunpowder and crushed concrete hung in the air. One anti-tank TOW missile costs tens of thousands of dollars. The strike force fired them repeatedly to obliterate a standard civilian villa. The siege lasted 4 relentless hours. The ultimate autopsy reports counted over 20 distinct bullet wounds. Inside the crumbling ruins, the survival space shrank to zero. Ammunition ran dry. The loyal bodyguard, Abdul Samad, fell first. He held the shattered perimeter until the crossfire cut him down. Then the 14-year-old dropped. A fatal shot hit Mustafa Hussein in the shrinking kill zone. Finally, only the 2 brothers remained. No medical kits, no escape routes, just blinding dust and endless detonations. They refused to walk out. Post-mortem examinations confirmed the brutal mechanics of their final stand. Forensic pathologists documented catastrophic ballistic trauma across their bodies, proving the brothers fired their weapons until the exact millisecond their nervous systems completely shut down. This massive barrage by the 101st Airborne Division was never a simple tactical choice. It became the only brutal alternative to a fanatical refusal to lay down arms. Why did 14-year-old Mustafa Hussein take up a rifle instead of walking out with his hands raised? Absolute, fatalistic clan loyalty left no room for captivity. The boy refused to hide. He gripped a heavy combat weapon, firing blindly into the choking dust on equal footing with the adult guards. Their sanctuary dissolved around them. Concrete turned to shrapnel. Qusay shifted between collapsing load-bearing walls, desperately trying to anchor a defense inside the crumbling trap. Uday burned through his magazines. He fired aggressively, matching the escalating chaos with pure desperation. The loyal bodyguard, Abdul Samad, held his ground right beside them. Retreat was impossible. Survival was completely off the table. Suddenly, the heavy machine guns paused. A distorted metallic voice from an American bullhorn cut through the thick gray dust. It offered one final chance to step outside alive. The trapped men bled in the dark wreckage, fully aware the battle was already lost. From the shattered ruins, the assault teams received exactly 0 replies. Command escalated the strike in direct response to the absolute silence from the ruins. By noon, the residential house in Mosul transformed into a live testing ground for heavy weaponry. Why deploy combat aviation against 4 isolated men? It was the sole alternative to a bloody close-quarters slaughter. The infantry pulled back. Assault teams abandoned the fatal choke points of the doorways. The perimeter widened. The raid was over. The siege began. It was no longer a capture mission. It was a methodical demolition. Heavy machine guns locked down every shattered window. Anti-tank weapons systematically dismantled the barricades. Clouds of thick concrete dust swallowed the street, hiding the methodical execution of the load-bearing walls. An AH-64 Apache helicopter hovered motionless above the roof. A volley of anti-tank missiles tore through the sky. Concrete floors buckled and snapped. A suffocating curtain of acrid gray smoke and pulverized cement choked the air. The 30mm cannon on the Apache fires 625 rounds per minute. It turned the reinforced residential block into a hollow sieve. Rockets struck the second floor again. The facade folded inward, and the outer walls collapsed under the relentless aerial barrage. Before the gunships tore the roof apart, the assault team tried a standard breach. Command expected a routine sweep. Flashbangs, shouting, plastic cuffs. Instead, the entry team hit a solid wall of lead. The first kick door triggered a calculated trap. No blind panic. No random shooting. The incoming gunfire was methodical, aimed, deadly. Qusay orchestrated the defense geometry. He turned the upper landing into a fortress. He calculated the angles. He forced the American operators into narrow, fatal funnels. The men inside were not cornered victims. They were veteran killers holding the high ground. Uday anchored the barricades. The 1996 assassination attempt had left him severely crippled. Shrapnel and an assassin's bullet remained lodged deep in his spine. His physiology was ruined, but the nerve damage did not ruin his trigger discipline. He poured dense, precise automatic fire directly into the advancing special forces. Uday reloaded his assault rifle while dragging a paralyzed left leg across the floorboards. Yet the first bullets from Uday only tore through the plaster after the American negotiators lowered their megaphones. Inside the villa sat a tight circle. Uday, Qusay, a 14-year-old boy named Mustafa Hussein, a lone bodyguard named Abdul Samad. What were the targets inside hoping for? The besieged knew the bitter truth. A military tribunal meant a humiliating public execution, far worse than a quick bullet. Interpreters stepped out from behind the armored Humvees. They mounted heavy psychological operations loudspeakers directly onto the steel hoods. The distorted metallic echo of the surrender order bounced off the empty street. Surrender meant life. The coalition hunted these brothers as targets number 2 and 3 on their infamous deck of cards. Capturing the former leaders alive remained the ultimate prize for military intelligence. But the barricaded windows of the house stayed completely motionless. No movement, no white flags. The presence of a 14-year-old teenager forced a massive political dilemma upon the ground commanders. Standard rules of engagement demanded extreme caution around minors, but that moral hesitation vanished completely the second the first automatic burst erupted from the upper floor. The negotiation protocol died instantly. The besieged made their final conscious choice. The closed doors offered no reply. The silence around Nawaf al-Zaidan's house did not manifest on its own. An hour before the ultimatum, strike teams methodically severed the district from the outside world. From the street, it looked like an ordinary facade of a regular residential building. But behind these concrete walls hid the ultimate targets of the overthrown regime. July 22, 2003, Mosul. A sprawling labyrinth of tribal loyalties shrank down to a single city block. The mechanics of the trap were cold and absolute. Soldiers of the 101st Airborne Division moved through the shadows. The silent crunch of combat boots on the morning asphalt marked the perimeter lockdown. Over 200 troops forged an impenetrable steel ring around the neighborhood. Snipers seized the rooftops. Armor choked the main intersections. Every possible escape route simply evaporated. The assault force knew their prey. Uday and Qusay possessed heavy weapons, tactical training, and a ruthless mandate for violence. Cornered men with nothing to lose do not negotiate. Intelligence briefs left the commanders with absolutely zero illusions. The analysts predicted a 100% probability of armed resistance. The impending 4-hour siege in Mosul grew directly from the chaos that swallowed the country after the fall of Baghdad. Why did this exact battle become a turning point? The equation was simple. It proved that the old power would never return. July 2003, American troops cornered Saddam Hussein's sons, Uday and Qusay, the direct heirs to a crushed empire. Their survival alone fueled the loyalist underground. Their death instantly destroyed the Ba'athist's last hopes of returning to the old order. The massive Iraqi state machine collapsed, not in the palaces of the capital. It died here, inside one concrete house. Missiles tore through the walls. Helicopters shredded the facade into gray dust. 4 hours of continuous fire to eliminate exactly 2 men. Troops dragged the bodies from the smoking rubble. The Mosul operation permanently fractured the Iraqi insurgency. The bloodbath in the ruins was not a masterclass in military intelligence. It was a simple, brutal transaction. A trusted informant looked at the failing insurgency and made his choice. He decided the safety of Uday and Qusay Hussein was worth significantly less than the American bounty. The dictator's elite underground network did not crack under intense interrogation. It collapsed entirely under the crushing weight of pure greed. $30 million for the heads of 2 fugitives, a staggering fortune. Decades of heavy global sanctions and fresh bombing campaigns had systematically annihilated the local economy. An average Iraqi citizen survived on barely $3 a month. The massive cash reward instantly rewrote the fundamental rules of survival. Before the invasion, The Hussein brothers commanded absolute devotion. Now, they were rapidly running out of places to hide. They bounced continuously between rural farms and loyalist estates. They completely abandoned their satellite phones. They moved in total radio silence, never sleeping in the same bed twice. Bloodlines and deeply rooted terror kept this invisible web intact. But terror has a strict expiration date. Hosting the fallen princes meant a guaranteed death sentence from coalition forces. Selling them meant absolute financial freedom. July 2003, Mosul. The suffocating midsummer heat baked the northern city. Boiling sunlight melted the asphalt around a heavily guarded hideout. Inside, the brothers waited in the dark. Outside, their host finalized his betrayal. Nawaf al-Zaidan walked into an American military command post. He sat down across from intelligence officers. He slid a meticulously hand-drawn floor plan across a metal table. He tapped his finger on specific rooms, detailing the exact firing angles and fortified doors. He confirmed with absolute certainty that both high-value targets were currently trapped inside. The coordinates pointed to a reinforced 3-story concrete mansion in the Al Falah neighborhood. The betrayal at that concrete mansion was no accident. Task Force 20 drove this relentless, methodical hunt. Central Intelligence Agency operatives tore the country apart. Night after night, helicopters cut through the dark. Operators kicked in doors. They raided suspected safe houses. How do you systematize the chaos of a manhunt? You turn the hunt for the elite into a simple gambling game with a deck of cards. The ace of spades for Saddam. The ace of hearts for Uday. The ace of clubs for Qusay. Specific suits marked the ultimate prey. The military compiled a master list of the 55 most wanted fugitives. Untouchable dictators became paper targets. Soldiers at midnight checkpoints shuffled stiff cardboard. The famous playing cards felt rough in their hands. Psychological pressure choked the regime. Everyone knew the faces. Logistics commands packed thousands of these sets. Supply trucks dropped off heavy boxes at forward bases. Officers handed the freshly printed decks directly to armed infantry patrols and local informants. Before Uday and Qusay became the heart and club aces in those freshly printed decks, they were ghosts. On April 9, 2003, the brothers evaporated from the capital. The collapse rolled from south to north. British armor choked Basra. American columns smashed through Najaf and Karbala. The defense line snapped. An administrative machine of nearly 400,000 loyalists dissolved in a matter of hours. Soldiers abandoned their uniforms in the streets. Generals fled. The vanguard breached Baghdad. The climax hit Firdos Square. A heavy chain wrapped around the bronze neck of the dictator. An armored recovery vehicle reversed. A loud metallic screech ripped through the air as the massive statue tore from its stone pedestal. The entire world watched the bronze idol smash into the pavement. But the real dictators were already slipping out through the back door. There was no final broadcast, no formal surrender. Saddam went underground. Uday and Qusay gathered a tight circle of bodyguards and vanished into the chaos. The vast presidential palaces stood empty. For decades, these deserted halls concealed the machinery of two terror architects, Uday and Qusay Hussein. Why exactly were the brothers the primary targets? Uday was the face of cruelty, but Qusay held the keys to all internal security. Uday was the volatile half, a public executioner. He transformed national media and the Iraqi Olympic Committee into personal instruments of torture. His brutality was raw, unpredictable, and blind to loyalty. In 1996, assassins ambushed him on the streets of Baghdad. He took multiple bullets at close range. He survived. The severe wounds left him with a permanent, dragging limp. But the near-death experience did not break his aggression. He remained a feared, erratic predator. Qusay was different. Quiet, calculating, and absolutely lethal. He was the hidden engine of the regime. While Uday sought the spotlight, Qusay managed the shadows. Saddam trusted him with the core mechanisms of state survival. Qusay took command of the Republican Guard and the Special Republican Guard. This authority meant direct control over about 100,000 elite fighters tasked entirely with protecting the regime. A massive, heavily armed shield between the dictator and the population. He managed the intelligence networks and the secret police. Qusay personally directed the armed suppression of internal uprisings. The machine of suppression did not simply evaporate. The Americans began its systematic execution in early 2003. March 20th, 2003. These early spring bombings laid the inevitable foundation for the summer betrayal. George Bush gave the order. Operation Shock and Awe. The doctrine demanded total psychological paralysis. American bombers dropped over 8,000 guided munitions in the first 48 hours, instantly decapitating the heavily armed Iraqi military. The sky over Baghdad ignited. Blinding flashes of explosions tore through the darkness. Night after night, precision bombs vaporized the capital's communication hubs. Concrete bunkers collapsed into dust. The state's nervous system shattered instantly. Field commanders stood in the dirt. Their radios hissed with dead static. No orders arrived. No central command existed. They fought blindly in complete isolation, cut off from the very leaders who had sent them to die. Saddam Hussein still appeared on state television. He projected an illusion of control, but behind the static-filled broadcast, his regime was already a rotting corpse. The American invasion crushed the Iraqi leadership physically and mentally. The untouchable brothers were suddenly running for their lives, while their vast network of safe houses crumbled. Trust evaporated. Paranoia took over the palaces. Men who had killed for the regime now burned their uniforms. They erased their own tracks. The inner circle shrank rapidly. The Americans printed a deck of cards featuring the top elite, 55 targets. Out of the dictator's closest guard, the number of loyal men actively looking for a way out hit exactly 55.